All right, good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting for Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 to order. The first item is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. We'll move on to citizens to be heard. I don't see any citizens in the audience to be heard. Anything online?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Wait, just to follow up,
Yes, Commissioner Moto.
Mr. Chair, were you able to follow up with the citizen that had had a concern?
We did reach out again this week and have not got a response from that person, so we'll continue to do that each week.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve the bills, vouchers.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. You have before you the minutes from July 6th, 2021.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. All right, and next, our 8:35 item is a request to approve purchase of a fleet vehicle for technology services. Rory, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. You recall from last week's budget presentation meeting, one of the items or requests for 2022 was $15,000 for a fleet vehicle for technology services to assist with getting to and from our extended camp.
Can you talk a little closer to your mic? Thank you.
And today, I'm here as developments have taken place. We've been able to track down an old vehicle that Sheriff's Office will be putting up on auction yet this year. Just requesting that we able to use internal services funds this year for that versus potentially using equipment over 500 funds for next year.
Is this vehicle going to be available to other people too then, or is it just going to be IT department?
It would be IT. We'd also share that with Mark Sloan's staff as well, if they needed it.
I'm assuming that would be mostly for in town around going from building
Can
to
be,
building.
yep, and then if we have a conference long-term, if it's available, we would use it. Otherwise, we could reserve the normal fleet vehicles throughout the county as well for those overnight trips.
What was the price that?
Sheriff's Office requested $10,000.
Commissioner Ebinger.
Is this a vehicle you'd use as a service vehicle and keep equipment in it? And
We try not to keep equipment in, but at least bringing it to and from the different locations that we need to service.
but mostly in the county?
Yes.
Do they currently check out county vehicles?
We do. It's averaging about 4 to 5 times a week. We're checking out a fleet vehicle and running somewhere, or staff will maybe also use their personal vehicles if they're in a bind.
Move to approve the request.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Any questions?
I do have one quick
Yes,
question.
Commissioner Kaylee.
And maybe nobody can answer that, but maybe Steve could check into, this won't affect my vote. Does this change the number of fleet vehicles that we need if there's, if you were using a fleet vehicle 4 or 5 times a week? Does that reduce the number of fleet vehicles that we need?
No, I don't think it would reduce it, because I think part of the reason the request is coming forward is so often he can't get a vehicle. And so I think that's part of the reason. So we would we would continue to need the same number of fleets.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. Next, we have a request to fill vacancy for social worker in adult protection services. Kirsten, good morning. So you have a request to fill a vacancy.
I do. So one of my adult protection workers, today is her last day. And I was not in this role when this position was approved several years ago, so I'm not sure what the conversation was at that point in time. But I can tell you, I know it was initially approved half-time adult protection, half-time chemical dependency worker. And I can tell you in the last 2.5 years that I've been in this role, that the need for a full-time adult protection worker has been quite significant. That position, the workload cannot be absorbed by one full-time adult protection worker. We have more reports coming in, more investigations, and it's just not something that one worker can absorb. I know there's probably concerns about losing that half-time chemical dependency worker that was initially approved, but with the substance use disorder reform, our CD unit has had multiple conversations about what our CD unit is going to look like, and I'm confident that our current chemical dependency workers can continue to provide the best service to our citizens possible without having that half-time position. So I feel that the need is more in the adult protection area right now, and I think that's going to continue.
Good morning.
Morning,
I
Rhonda.
apologize. I didn't have the board on to see if you were ahead of the schedule, as I normally do, so I apologize.
So there is a change that you're requesting then in terms,
Yes.
so it's not just a filling a vacancy, it's
It is
more
a
than that.
change, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this position, when Pat Boyer and I came before the board, it's been several years since we had this position. At the time, we were dealing with workload issues in both chemical health and adult protection. Quite honestly, we anticipated over time to see the need grow in adult protection. We had seen that trend and we anticipated that we were gonna be here at some point. And just based on the workload assignment, we've just seen it naturally. More of the workload has been in the adult protection than chemical health. So I'm not surprised that we're kind of at this point to make it all adult protection versus chemical health, so.
Commissioner Gross, and then
So what's chemical health gonna do? Are they requesting a position too then, or
No, we are not.
are you still gonna do some of their work then with this?
Yeah, we already have 4 full-time staff involved in chemical health, so they'll continue their work. It's 4 full-time, right? Yeah, correct. 4 full-time. We're just really gonna be moving, well, this position has been doing pretty much all adult protection for quite a while, just because of the demand in that area.
anything else, Commissioner Gross? Okay, Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. My question is in regards to the budget piece. Will you have a reduction in the chemical health staffing line item since you will not be staffing that halftime with those funds?
We really won't be. It's for our social service program area, it's just all of our FTEs. So we're not, the position is budgeted as an FTE. It's the same classification as the chemical health area. They're all social work classifications. So the budget won't change, the FTE status won't change. It'll just be, the workload assignment is really just different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Follow up then, in terms of the chemical health, are there any grants that we have applied to or are currently receiving funding for that would change because we don't fulfill the workload with a certain percentage capacity of chemical health?
No, we don't have any grants in the chemical health area. The revenue we earn in chemical health is we do some fee assessments for the assessments that we do. Other than that, it's one of those areas that we don't receive a lot of funding for. The staff time, we do earn some what they call social service time study money. I don't anticipate that changing at all. Am I missing? I don't think so.
And I appreciate the fact that you're seeing more of a need in a certain area, so you're willing to shift some staff time and funds over, to where it would be most utilized. So I really do commend you for that, and I appreciate clarifying the budget piece.
And according to the document that we have here, there's a projected savings for 2021 of $5,880. Is that correct?
Right, that would be based on the wage calculator HR did, looking at the current employee and where they're at on the grade, and assuming that ultimately we'll replace somebody brand new coming in. I do think we'll have some internal interest for this position, and so ultimately we would be backfilling a vacancy, so we would be requesting that as a part of the motion.
I've never asked this question. When you backfill, is there the potential for savings there too?
Well, so for example, in this case, let's just say we have a child protection worker, which unfortunately often is the case, that is interested in moving in this position. Because it's the same classification, they would stay on their same grade and step, move to the new workload, and then we'd be hiring somebody brand new into that position. And we make the assumption that it would be at step one on that grade, and that's what we've done here. So this projected savings reflects that.
So when you
That makes
backfill a position, that person who's moving in to fill, then that position becomes open.
Yes, so sometimes we have some savings because of time period of filling, yeah.
So you could theoretically have more than one backfill.
Yes. Sometimes that's a difficulty for us depending on the position. We might have a child protection worker who's interested in this position, and then maybe we have another social worker from another area who wants the child protection. So we have this kind of chain of events until ultimately we get to the workload that we're hiring externally for.
All right, I agree with Commissioner Mojo. I think it's great that you're able to see where the services are best suited and operate in that way. So I think it's a good deal.
Thank you.
Move to approve the position with backfill.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Kaylee with backfill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, you're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sheriff. We have a request for approval of updated River Regional Dispatch Center Teletype agreement.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thanks for having me this morning. Essentially just here to get the approval to sign the agreement between the Sheriff's Office and the Dispatch Center to continue to work with our NCIC system, which is a national system, and then our Criminal Justice Information System as well, to confirm, we call them hit requests, but they're like warrant requests, stolen vehicle things and such as that, and to continue running individuals through the state computer system for driver's license checks, vehicle checks, and things of that nature. This agreement hasn't been updated since 2003, so during a recent BCA audit, they suggested that it gets updated with current signatures, and that's what I'm here for today.
Is there a time period on this, Sheriff, or is it just go until?
The only time period I've seen is at the very end, the very last paragraph. The agreement may be terminated by either party at any time with or without cause upon 60 days written notice delivered to the other party.
Commissioner Ebinger.
Sheriff, this pretty much just boilerplate. Every agency in the state does it.
Correct, yeah, every agency that goes through dispatch here in Clay County will have to do this agreement.
I move for approval.
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Ebinger, second by Commissioner Gross. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you. Next, we have a proclamation for pretrial probation and patrol week. Jen Altini, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. We don't have a formal proclamation, but I do appreciate you having me here today and just giving recognition to our staff. We have 15 agents, 6 support staff, and 1 STS crew leader who serve Clay County. Our staff are an essential part of the criminal justice system. They uphold the law with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. They are trained professionals who provide services and referrals for others. They work in partnership with community agencies and groups. Our staff promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy. They provide guidance and skill-directed practice with individuals. They also provide services, support, and protection for victims as well. In closing, our staff advocate for a healthy community. Thank you.
So you don't have a proclamation?
I don't have a formal, the Department of Corrections doesn't have a formal proclamation.
Okay.
So this week, we just celebrate, it is Nationally Pretrial Probation and Parole Week, trying to highlight the activity that they do. We started out yesterday, had a kickoff brunch. We've got some activities through the week to kind of highlight things and focus on de-stressing in these trying times.
Well, on behalf of our board, make sure you send a thank you out to all of your staff for the work that they do.
Will do. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we proclaim this pretrial probation and patrol week. Just let me know where the party's at.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Yes.
I just, on a personal note, my 13 years with Moorhead Police, you and your staff have repeatedly been supportive, not just to the officers here, but your probationers and people who you're trying to keep on the right track. And it's a real asset to the community and the state, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. All right, now we can move into your annual budget presentation.
Yes, I can kind of go through it line by item. You'll see an increase in some of the salary areas. We have 1 vacancy right now, and so I took the median salary and utilized that. And so we did have some retirement, so initially it will decrease a little bit, so that was good. Part-time salary went up a little bit. New to our budget would be the sentence to serve. That was moved over from the jail budget to our budget. So you'll see an increase overall to our budget due to that. And that was the contract that was signed, so no changes with that. Health insurance does go up. Due to our one vacancy with an agent position, when I used an approximate budget, I utilize family insurance. I do anticipate that that may be individual insurance, so that would decrease by 15,000. Cell phones, I decreased, proposed $1,000 decrease to that. We haven't seen any expenses that we needed to maintain that. Translators, that other professional services line item, 6271, I increased that by 800 just because we are seeing an increase in the need of translators when we meet with individuals to either do interviews or in just doing our contacts.
Okay. I have a question with that translator piece. I know that there are a variety of agencies that are trying to figure out the best way to deal with that. I think it's a vital service, but to make sure they do it while keeping the budget in mind. Is that a service that's contracted through the state of, at the state level, or are you finding local agencies to work with?
So the contract office does work locally with services. They're pretty consistent with who the court uses.
Okay.
Locally, the Department of Corrections does have a contract, and so many times they're utilizing someone from St. Paul or
Okay.
We've tried to make sure we utilize who's ever closest, but the contract office definitely utilizes individuals that are within this region.
Thank you.
Yep. The training budget decreased by, I think, 300. I see that we may have a decrease with that just because of COVID-19 and how individuals are providing training, what's necessary. Travel and expenses also decreased by 2,000. I foresee a lot of training being offered virtually instead of having agents or support staff travel and be in person. We did remove the unemployment comp line item. And I did look to increase, we had auto repair and maintenance supplies at $50, and I'm not quite sure what we could do with $50 if anything ever were to happen. So we merely increased that to 200. And then equipment, I reduced that to 1,000. We did, the Department of Corrections did do a transition with IT services, and so now the Department of Corrections oversees laptops and technical equipment like that. So anything that needs to be replaced in that area would be done by the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And I think those are basically the changes.
I'm just curious why we had an unemployment line item in 2020 and we didn't have it any other year.
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if Lori could maybe speak to that at another time, or.
Yes, please. Okay. You're anticipating your revenues and grants to remain?
Correct. We don't have any grants per se at this time, but we still do receive supervision fees. The donation line item up there is fluid. We're not sure when we would receive that. That's based on us facilitating the MAD Victim Impact Panel.
Okay. Any questions of Janelle? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Darren, go through your HR budget. This is updated.
All right, well, thank you for having me. As you know, I have a fairly small office, and most of my budget is in salaries. My makeup of my office is I have a HR generalist who has been here for 14 years and 9 years with HR. I have a part-time admin assistant who has been here for 1.5 years with HR. She's been here a little bit longer, but she started working for HR about 1.5 years ago. I have a HR coordinator who has also been here for 1.5 years, and then myself, who has been here for 10.5 years. Like I said, most of my budget is salaries. There are two main things that I wanted to point out at this point. One of them will be on the subscription line, 6242. And what you'll see there is what I'd like to do is consider continuing the David Drown HR technical program. I brought this to the board last year, which was shot down at that time, but these funds were taken out of the CARES Act last year. So we continued with that. And what I'd like to do is continue that in my budget. There's a couple caveats to that, though. Number one, this is run by AMC and David Drown Associates, and what it is it's a HR technical program, so that it has a lot of Minnesota stuff that comes in, laws changes, that type of thing. We can submit questions, and within 24 hours, we get answers back from them. Very good, detailed answers as well. And that alone probably saves us money in labor attorney costs. The other caveat to that is it's all dependent on how many counties participate in this program, because AMC contracts with David Drown Associates for this information in this program. And so if they don't have enough participation, they may just not do it next year. So I put that in there kind of as a placeholder for this coming year, but it's unsure of whether they'll continue the program next year. But if they do, I would certainly like to continue that. As a matter of fact, I just used them last week on a question that I had about a labor question, and they came back within less than 24 hours with a very good detailed description of this. So,
So Darren, just to clarify, when you said you were shot down last year, you really weren't shot down. It's just the source of payment.
The source was changed, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that was, I think, very beneficial, because last year during COVID, this David Drown Associates HR Tech program had a lot of information on COVID and processing the Family First Recovery Act stuff. So it came out with a lot of that. And so I think we were very justified in using CARES money to participate in that program. The other change is on my advertising line. I have never had an advertising line before. That was just put in this year. And what that is for is we got an annual subscription to what's called governmentjobs.com. With all of the difficulty in hiring and advertising and everything like that, I figure we needed something that's a little bit more than just our general area. And what happens is the governmentjobs.com, it goes out nationwide. And normally what we do with our advertising is the departments will pay for their own advertising. So if the let's say corrections wants to advertise for a correctional officer, and they want to put it in the paper or jobs.com or whatever, then we will bill them directly for what the cost of that is. But with governmentjobs.com, it's an annual fee. And so I decided just to put that in my budget. And then every time a job comes open, we automatically put it on governmentjobs.com. And it would be very difficult and administratively more difficult if I had to break that $1,890-some out to all the departments that ever advertise. So in talking to Lori, she thought it would be better just to put an advertising line in my line and then put that amount in the HR advertising line. So that's the reasoning for never seeing that line before and then seeing the $2,000 in there. And that's for a yearly subscription. Other than that, not too much else has changed. As you know, last year we didn't have any in-person trainings. We had some virtual trainings that I attended, but nothing in person. I'm hoping next year in 2022 we can get back to some normalcy of having a few in-person trainings. I'm assuming that the one training that I have coming up in August, which is for MPELRA, that is both virtual and in person. And I'm hoping in 2022 maybe we can start getting back to some more in-person training. So, barring any questions, that's kind of my budget.
Commissioner Eber.
Just to kind of jump in, as we get the AMC training that myself and Commissioner Cayley attended, I repeatedly heard the concern from new commissioners that were at this training about the difficulty in hiring. And we've seen that here. And I have personal experience with governmentjobs.com because that's where I responded 15, 16 years ago now, and got a job here.
So
And
it works.
we have to cast a wide net, it helps. And the people that came in for the interviews were from various communities around the country, so it helped.
Yep.
Another just personal experience observation, particularly in disciplinary issues and some of those things, it really pays off to have somebody that's not going to give you billable hours. Sorry, counselor. Every time you pick up the phone and have a
We can't even
question.
afford Brian.
And it is helpful, and I came back from last week with a real impression that AMC provides a lot of good services for county governments here, so I'm supportive of those requests.
Thank you. AMC is constantly trying to find funds to pay for that program. Through grants or funding or whatever. So AMC does share some of the costs for that David Drown Associates HR technical program because they do feel it's very beneficial. The problem is not all the counties are participating, and so the cost for existing counties is a little bit more. I don't think I would want to go any more than $4,900 per year for that.
Well, it is a new request, and typically our new requests the presentations are made as to why, and we wait on a decision until we've seen the entire budget package presented, so that, you know, we could have an awful lot of new requests, and so we need to. That's why my next topic is going to be, Steve, I know we're getting these individual department updates, but I'm hoping that soon we can see the overall where we're at right now presentation with the entire budget. So as a matter of fact, this morning we technically, through a motion, we did approve a new request. And that was with that vehicle. And before we start getting to too many of those things, I think we really should see an overall picture of all departments and where they're at right now. You know, in the event that we have to start trimming someplace, we should get an idea what the overall picture is, so.
Also, just a very quick note, I forgot to mention that as you've been told before, the HR payroll system is going to be obsolete here next year, and so we were in the process of getting a new one for next year. I took that, because I paid a very small portion of that out of my budget for the current system that we have. But I took that out of my line because Lori Johnson is going to cover that in another portion of the budget. So just so you're aware that that's why that $10,000 came out.
And which, what was that again now?
Ultimate.
Huh?
Ultimate is the program that they've decided on.
Yeah, but what does it do?
It's like it basically is everything that has to do with HR and payroll. So it pays you, it tracks years of service, I mean, everything, it's our main database that we use for HR and payroll systems. And Optimum got bought out by Kronos, and so they went through a RFP process. They identified 6 companies that were viable for us, and they narrowed it down to 1. And implementation is started with other counties, but the other counties that were using Optimum, and we're looking at our implementation next year. So that's kind of will be as part of Lori's budget. That's included in there. So that's why I took out my portion of it.
I don't know, Steve, if that's something that would ever qualify for that compliance dollars that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Portion
we
of it?
certainly could look at that. I think Lori's said there has been some discussion on the state level. I can check with her.
Yeah, okay. Any questions of Darren in his budget presentation? Thank you, Darren.
Great, thank you.
All right, next item is the request of approval for change orders on the CSAH 8 project. Good morning, Dave. Justin, good morning.
Morning. So we are here to talk about our County Road 8 project. Last summer, we started working on the project. Initially, it was supposed to be just basically a paving job where you grind up the existing materials and you relay those down and then pave new asphalt on top of it. In July, it became pretty apparent that the road bed itself was not setting up. We tried several things along the way to try to get this project to work. We initially tried opening the road up and then digging it up with big basically discs, farming discs, which is a common practice. We tried this in several areas and it actually worked in some of the areas, but the biggest area kind of in the middle of the job is about 7,000 feet and it did not set up. Another thing we tried is we tried to put a trench down the middle of the road and put asphalt millings in there. Right where the outer wheel path was, it seemed like it was the area that was failing and not holding up from the equipment. We tried that, and it actually basically created an easier way for water to get into this area, so that didn't work. One time in the middle of July, we went out and we dug a little hole probably about this deep with a spade, and it filled up with water in less than seconds. There was just so much water down in the subgrade. We tried digging out French drains was another idea. We've been consulting with MnDOT along the way, and we tried digging French drains out, and I think those probably did help over this past 6 to 8 months or so, but in order to get us to the road to heal up so we could pave on it, it didn't have enough time. Drain tiles, I think, maybe work slower than that, and so we learned a few lessons there. So then we're getting towards middle of August or so. We know beet harvest is coming. We decided we want to get out there, and the contractor was suggesting maybe we dig out the whole road, the whole 4.5 miles. We didn't feel the whole road was that bad, so we decided to roll the dice and try to pave it, which we did, and we paved about 80% of it or so. We had 7,000 feet that just would not hold up from the asphalt trucks hauling the mix and the paver itself. So we got that far anyway. We identified the worst areas, the worst area, I should say, which was, I think it was a good bet because one, we got the road surfaced. It took the guesswork out of what was really bad and what wasn't. Like I said, it could have been a lot worse. We could have ended up digging out more and more of the road. When we got to that 7,000 feet, we got a price from the contractor to remove and replace it, 18 inches deep. We got out there and dug out the 18 inches and realized that we're still on top of wet, poor material. It ended up being 30 inches of subcut, which is quite a lot. The original estimate was about $320,000, And as you can see in the change order list, that would be for change order number 8, end up being $621,000. Significantly more, but I mean, the material had to come out. We wouldn't build a road like that with the poor materials down there still, so. As you can see, there's 11 change orders on the list there. Change orders 1, 2, and 5 are just your kind of maybe standard things that come along the way. They're not really resulted to the events I just described. Change orders 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all directly related to the poor subgrade out there. I know we've talked a couple times at this board and extensively with our highway committee, and they had some very legitimate questions like, how did we not know this? How did this happen? And, we did do borings. We've been talking with Brown Intertech several times. In fact, we just talked to them yesterday again on additional work, and we talked about this project, and it's just the amount of water in this area just didn't really show up in the borings that we took. The other thing is, once that road was reclaimed, basically opened up, we did get some rains, and I think that probably obviously aided to the wet subgrade. Do you have any comments on?
I think you touched on it very well.
I mean, it's very unfortunate. The other thing that was asked is, why aren't change orders brought in? And I guess from the highway department standpoint, and I have checked with additional counties around the state a little bit, and I think our plan is to try to put together a process or policy on what to do with change orders, where the thresholds are, when the county board approves them and doesn't approve them. But I don't have a past practice of bringing change orders in for state aid projects. All this gas tax dollars that roll down to the counties, they're heavily overseen by MnDOT. So they've got processes. There's a state aid engineer in Detroit Lakes. And so these change orders, if they exceed $50,000, they do need to be approved, by the state. That's part of the rules of the money that we get. They look at the scope just to make sure you're not doing something that would violate or go against state aid policies, and they also verify that your state aid account can handle the additional change order itself. So those were, would you say there was 4 of them? Anything over $50,000 was approved by?
There'd be 5 of them.
So the 5 that exceeded 50,000 were run through MnDOT, the way our normal stated procedures are. At this time, from the direction from the Highway Committee, it is thought that we should bring them to this board so that they have, fiduciary responsibilities, making sure that the additional funds are at least discussed at this board.
So I can maybe start here. Obviously, these are things that we committed to with the contractor, and so they're gonna need to be paid. The area that you talk about on your attachment E, where you say the state aid rules require that all change orders of $50,000 be approved by the MnDOT engineer, and part of the reason why they do that is to make sure there's funds available. And so I think what we're gonna have to do here moving forward is when you come up with a significant change in a project cost that's in our 5-year plan, our 5-year plan already takes into consideration our borrowing in advance of some state funds. So if we've reached our maximum amount that we're allowed to get in advance funds, something else is gonna suffer. Now, I know we get into a position, for example, where, well, you can't really see these things delayed, but when you have a significant dollar amount, I think it's very important that the board knows it up front in the event that something else within the 5-year plan needs to take place. And I'll give you an example on a smaller scale, but our project up on 15th Avenue North right now, they had to do some borings. 15th Avenue was closed, and it's still closed because they went through a process and they found the mapping of where services were supposed to be were wrong. And so they had to find that. In the meantime, the whole road is still closed. Now, this could be a 1-week deal that something like this could still come to the board. And I guess what I'm saying for our new commissioners and those not on our highway tracking committee is we certainly plan on trying to come forward with some sort of a plan in the future for when a significant change like this happens, that our board is notified, hopefully beforehand, as to what that plan is, and just like MnDOT, to make sure we have the funds to do it. No different. It's no different than their own criteria, is to make sure there's funds available to do it. So, but our highway tracking committee has recommended that this change order be approved, so.
I guess I'd have to agree with you on that. I mean, the fact that, yeah, we shouldn't know about it when this stuff happens, you know, but there's still nothing we can do about it, you know. That road has to be fixed, so no matter how we do it, it's gonna cost us some more money to get it fixed. These are things that we didn't know about before, so it still has to be fixed.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, think that this is kind of the culmination of a lot of different things. I agree with what's been said. We have to make sure that the board is informed as things go on, specifically the highway tracking department or highway tracking committee, where these large number change orders will be. I will say that I'm grateful that you did include me in a lot of those early discussions. There were three choices to help mitigate the problems in the road, and when one didn't work, unfortunately, then two didn't work, and now three. I think we've come out with a much better road because of it. When you go over a long time slough, that will be problematic. But I think what we learned from it going forward is we do probably need to do better jobs or take more samples, core samples, to make sure that we're knowing what's going on. It does make sense maybe that they grab some of the clay from the ditch early on, 50, 60 years ago, and put it back up onto the road surface. I get that. My biggest concern though is there were some times where this specific road sat with no equipment on it for a month in the summer and then another month in the fall. And there are substantial costs that we can't go back and say, well, we're not going to pay that because we are contractually obligated to do that. But I think there needs to be some more pressure on some of these companies that this absolutely has to happen, and you absolutely need to come back and fix this before the end. And maybe that needs to be a more stern conversation from this board to direct you to do that. I don't know, but we did get really lucky that no one was killed on that road during beet harvest. The amount of trucks and traffic in a construction zone and a single lane, 24 hours a day, we got lucky. And I really don't want to approve any of some of these cost overruns. I get that we have to, and so my vote will be to support that, but we really do need to change how we deal with change orders this significant in the future.
Yeah, I think the one nice thing about this is the change order request here is significant. It is in dollar amounts. One of my primary concerns within the whole system was that something that we basically had listed within our 5-year plan wouldn't have to be removed as a result of this. Fortunately, on some of the other good work that you did, we've received some other grants that were unexpected that are going to help offset this. So from an overall picture standpoint, I don't think there's going to be anything within our 5-year plan that's going to have to be delayed. So from that standpoint, we're in a fortunate position, and I give you guys the credit for going through and getting those grants for that as well. So with that,
I might have just a follow-up.
Yeah.
I do want to say that I appreciate the fact that there were overruns, but we fixed the road correctly. It was very clear that if they would have just put those 3 layers on, that we would be in the same situation this summer as we were last. And so you did make a decision that you weren't going to just put a Band-Aid on something that wasn't fixed, and you did fix it, and hopefully it will hold up for a significant amount of time. So I think that you were using dollars wisely in that aspect, that sometimes it does cost a little bit more to make sure you fix it correctly, and that's what you did.
Well, I remember sitting here saying that, oh, we'll have this thing paved for beet harvest last year, and it didn't happen, I mean, mostly paved, and then come this year, we run into some of these, we were negotiating out some of these last few change orders, and I felt like we were a little bit in jeopardy again, and I really did not want to go through 2021 with portions of the road not paved still, so it was it was scary, and it was a lot of dollars, and like I said, I think with more communication and approvals from this board, maybe in the future, that'll be a little better.
Commissioner Kaylee.
Whatever that process is that's developed, I would hate for us to have to wait a week and accrue to disappear in the meantime before, an approval can come before the board. Will that be something that's taken into consideration?
It is, and again, it's gonna depend on what those, there's gonna be a recommendation, I think that would come where the Highway Tracking Committee might be able to at least be pre-advised of the situation and give some sort of pre-authorization. Similar to what we talked about just recently on our construction project, where our transfer station committee has the ability to make some decisions up to a certain amount. And so I think those are discussions that we're having, but again, I mean, you still have to have the money. I just want to give you an example here. For example, if County One was also supposed to be a project that was supposed to be done this year, right? And that was another $1 million project?
Yep.
And part of that whole process then would have required then our borrowing and advancing of those funds. Now, if that project got delayed for other reasons, now, if both of those would have been done now, what would have happened if we would have, we would have capped out with our state aid dollars? Something would have had to give. So that's the point that I'm making, where this is the first time I've ever seen a change order this significant in my 20-some years. Typically, they're not anywhere near the dollar amounts we're talking about. It's a rare thing. I think, Dave, you've said you've maybe seen 3 of them in your time as
In excess of 100,000, only 3 times, this one being this year, where we had something this large.
There was another project too, that fortunately, this one, the soil borings were adequate on the project. That was, it's 13 now, and it used to be 75, County 75, and it's 13 now. That project in our 5-year plan had been a mill and overlay, and it was supposed to be a $250,000 project. Well, by the time they got through and they did the soil borings and everything, and it was determined that they'd have to do a complete regrading and redoing of the road. That turned from a $250,000 project to a $1.5 million project. But the fortunate thing there is that we had the time and we got the information on it where we could decide what else might have had to be adjusted within the 5-year plan. And that's all we're talking about here, is just making sure that we can keep everything on track. But I commend you for your efforts. Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Gross are right. The road had to be done right. We couldn't adjust that, but it's just the process of the board being aware. I think that's important to always keep that in mind.
I think further thing we discussed at the board, at the Highway Tracking Committee, was putting in contingency plans and stuff, like we do with these other contracts.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would have put that much of a contingency in there, though. So it still had to be done, so.
That was a big contingency.
Yeah. All right, well, we have a request to approve the change orders as listed. What's the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the change orders.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, thank you, guys. All right, committee reports. Commissioner Mojo, would you like to go first today?
Thank you. Last week, I was at the county fair.
Yes, you were.
So I just want to thank the Extension Committee, those that were able to come out on Sunday and serve ice cream to the public. It was well-received in the warm temperatures, but I also want to express my gratitude to the individuals who serve on the Clay County Fair Board and those that work with Clay County Extension who were present. That really is a service to the public, and they work really hard to make that happen, so thank you very much for that. Yesterday, I attended the American Rescue Plan Act Committee. We had a discussion item on ITV in the jail from Justin Roberts. That was something that they definitely needed to update to make sure that court hearings could go forward. That recommendation will come towards this board, and then had a long discussion with Dara Lee from the Clay County HRA, identifying gaps in services that have come up because of different federal regulations and laws. We are asking for a few more information graphs on some areas, but we'll be talking about a couple recommendations from that discussion next Tuesday. And then talked about the cities, small cities and township awarenesses. I think that there have been a couple of township officers who have reached out to, I think Commissioner Gross, but maybe also Gabe Tweeten had a question brought out. We'll talk a little more about how we, as county staff, can make sure and outreach to those folks as we hear informational changes. And we'll work on some sort of informational person as a point of contact so that they know any deadlines coming up. It's a little more delayed just because the deadlines with the CARES Act was quicker. And so I think oftentimes by the time townships were able to meet, some of those deadlines had passed. So we'll make sure and get that information to them as needed. But also that they have, we'll have our small city meeting hopefully in October at some point, and the township officers meeting in November to make sure that we're sending any information that we have to them as needed. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Gross.
Tuesday, we had the highway tracking meeting. First item we discussed was the condemnation hearings. They're gonna be going on July 22nd, and I'm sure our attorney will keep us appraised of that, how they come out, you know, this, taking over some of that land that people aren't satisfied with their appraised value. Same thing in Glendon, the turn lane in Glendon, right by the lights, if you're acquainted with that area. They found out the mapping was off, so we're trying to get land that they don't even know who it belongs to, I guess, and so they're working on that project yet. That is gonna turn that project back a little bit. The next thing we did was the County State 8, Highway 8, which we just got done discussing. And that was discussed pretty much on how we're gonna proceed in future orders where there's a change order. Talking about some speed signs being put up. We're looking at purchasing some, I think we're looking at purchasing some of those flashing speed signs put up on County State 8, Highway 3, trying to slow the speed down somewhat, you know, see if that'll help. There's some complaints on gravel trucks out in the country driving too fast, and I think we put some road signs up already up in County 27, I think it is, where we put some signs up to try and slow down the traffic somewhat. After that, Tuesday night I went up to Ullin to the city council meeting, and they've already talked about the CARES funds and stuff like that, that I wanted to make sure they were aware that there's some coming, and they already got, I think, how much they got coming, and they've already got all the signs, so they're building a new water, or redoing their water tower up there, and so they pretty much assigned all their funds to the water tower. Wednesday, Wild Rice Watershed Board. A lot of discussion there too on appraised value. There just seems to be a lot of problems that people aren't accepting appraised value. They want more for the land, I guess, and it makes it sort of tough when some of them have already accepted the appraised value, and then there's a few holdouts, and they're having problems with that, just like I guess we are in our situations. I know Mr. Erickson discussed there's an advisory committee, and he wanted them to get more involved. You know, you have an advisory committee, and what's their purpose? I guess he was trying to find out, you know, if they meet only once a year or twice a year, you know, how much advice can they give to a council or whatever, as far as what should be done and stuff like that. So he was questioning the duties of the advisory committee. Another important thing that you know, the federal crop insurance, CRP, it's $195 an acre already. I don't know, for those of you who didn't farm before, that probably doesn't mean that much to you, but I know I remember my parents, they used to get about $14 or $20 an acre, you know, and now you're talking $195 an acre, and wow, I think it's time to go back to farming again. But no, it's, I mean, they're getting a good price for it right now. Other than that, Thursday, Fair Day, Jenny's covered that pretty much already. Again, thank you for the people who did come out there. I think we do need to get a sign on that tent that's out there so people are aware that what we are doing out there, we're not just a bunch of guys standing in the shade, you know,
I forgot to mention it, so I'm glad you did.
I think we need to identify that tent somehow. I don't know whether the fair board does it or whether, I think, talking to Mark already, I think he's talking about some signs or something, but I don't know if we can put the sign on the tent or whatever. We need to put some sort of sign up that it is the government day, and that's what we're there for. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaylee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All of last week was spent at AMC, County Government 201. Some of the things that we talked about at that conference were Dr. Susan Brower, the Minnesota State demographer, did a presentation on demographic and economic changes. One of the things that really stuck with me from her presentation was the projections on labor force growth and how that has really slowed. And she's projecting, well, the data is projecting that it will continue to slow. So for 2020 through 2025, the state of Minnesota is likely only to add 6,000 new laborers to the labor force. And the next 5 years after that, again, only another 6,000 added. So when we're looking at all of these big projects, like our diversion project, where we need over 7,000 skilled laborers, you know, we're only adding 6,000 in the whole state of Minnesota. That's something to really think about, what that's going to do with material costs, labor costs, and things like that. We also talked about open meeting law, ethics for commissioners, parliamentary procedure, strengths-based leadership, and media relations. It was a really great conference. We went from 7 a.m. to it was often well after 10 by the time we finished talking to commissioners. It was a great time, and good relationships and networking were developed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Abinger.
My week last week was spent with the AMC County Government 201, which has been pretty well described by Commissioner Kaylee. One of the things that for years and years I've watched training budgets in my prior life and was always concerned on what employees were bringing back. And this is a great opportunity to network. It gave us good information that's pragmatic, things that we need to be commissioners. And it was great to see new commissioners there who had the same question. We had some great conversations there. The problems we face here are universal across the state. And again, I'll echo what my colleague here said. One of the issues we've got is workforce. And that's being addressed to a degree on both sides of the river by building facilities that'll train the next generation of workforce. And I hope that's something our community needs to be aware of. There's other options than college, and there are high-paying, good jobs for skilled people in the trades. And with that, the opportunity to get those skills is being made available. I'm also on the diversion committee, and as Commissioner Kaylee indicated, we're gonna need a lot of skilled tradespeople in the completion of this diversion project. So you also look, and there's need for employees at Amazon across the river. We've got a lot of things developing in this community. So that was one of the things that we heard, or I heard repeatedly from other commissioners, is concerns about filling jobs. And we all share those concerns when we look at filling county jobs, particularly in law enforcement, dispatch, corrections. Those are tough jobs to fill. So this gave us a little bit of a knowledge base so that we can come in and identify where the problems are. And it was a good conference. That completes my report.
All right, thank you. On July 11th, we had a solid waste budget meeting, and we went over the proposals that'll be coming to the board soon. We had Laurie Johnson there, and we talked about the bond, how we're gonna incorporate the bond payment into the capital budget, which the proposal will be the service fee that we collect on property taxes for all individuals within the county will cover the bond payment. It'll cover the internal service funds needed. It'll cover the payment to Prairie Lake Solid Waste, the annual payment to Prairie Lake Solid Waste, and it'll cover some professional fees, and there might be some money available to transfer over to the operations area of the solid waste to help cover some admin costs. So that's preliminary has been done. Lori liked what was the idea that was gonna go on there. It might be some slight changes to the way we see things on paper. The end result is, of course, with any time that you're gonna add $630,000 bond payment, there is gonna have to be some sort of a revenue increase to deal with that. And that, of course, is the bond payment for the transfer station. And so we're looking at a small increase on the service fee thing proposed, and then also to some degree, there's some changes in operations where the proposal is the county will take over the transportation from the transfer station to either the landfill or to Perham. So that before was a city function. It was the request of our solid waste department to have that portion of the operation turned over to Clay County. But there'll be a significant presentation on that coming up, I think in August, I think is the time frame for that. So. Then on the same day, I had a highway tracking meeting. Commissioner Gross talked about that quite a bit. I just want to add on those traffic signs on County State Highway number 3. The area that we're talking about is that area right up in the Johnson Park area and a little residential area just to the north of there. And there's been a request for a long time from the citizens up there to have a speed reduction in there, and through the state process, it didn't meet. And of course, the state MnDOT is the one who determines traffic speeds, not county boards. I hope that was something that was presented to you too at your meetings, but because it's something that you can avoid the political thing by dealing with proper scientific information. But anyways, one of the options that we do have would be to put up these traffic radar signs that will flash. You can select whatever speed you want that to come on, and it flashes to give notice to travelers that they're maybe exceeding what they should be doing. And it's a good tool. I know we talked about it every time. I don't know if any of you travel 15th Avenue North. You probably run across that all the time. It's a permanent one there, and every time I drive there, my foot for some reason just goes right to my brake. Whether I'm speeding or not, because it's just a natural tendency to make, when you see that, you want to just.
You're gonna be camped up there now.
Huh? Well, let them be camped up there, that's fine. I don't, okay, so I have to admit, I've had that thing say that I'm going 33 or 34 and a 30, so I'll admit that. So, but I do immediately hit the brake, Commissioner Mojo. Okay. All right, and then we did talk a little bit too about going back again with the, I know it was through highway tracking, but it even came up again about, in several different meetings, about the township's awareness of the American Recovers dollars and how they go about. We talked about that yesterday in our meeting too, but then on the 13th again, I had a Metro Flood Diversion Authority executive meeting, and there was some updates on the P3 schedule. There were some settlement policy updates, and there's work on a full board retreat, which would be open to the public. And then the plan right now is, according to the P3 companies, they intend to, their goal is they want to see that thing completed in 2026. So my questions were just making sure that through our finance plan that we have, that Commissioner Ebinger serves on, that we're going to be able to meet those milestone payments. And I was basically assured by John Shockley and that group that's been in the plan to do that. So on the 19th, we had, which was yesterday, we had our American Recovers Rescue Plan. We call it CARES 2. And as Commissioner Mojo said, we had 2 presentations, and then we had some discussion about moving forward in the future. And I just want to give a shout out to Darren Darren has put together a tremendous worksheet that we're able to use. And it's, when you see it, and I suggested that Darren shows it to the full board soon, because I think you'll really like it, and you'll see how it helps us in categorizing and making sure the decisions we make follow the guidelines of the CARES, or the American Recovery Plan requirements. So again, Darren, thank you for that. It was excellent work. And with that concludes my report. So, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 13th, I attended a highway tracking meeting that's been covered by both yourself and Commissioner Gross. That afternoon, we continued with our budget reviews with the solid waste that you've touched on. That afternoon, I spoke with the county administrator in Mauer County. Had questions about how our shared LEC worked in regional dispatch facility. That afternoon, I met with Sheriff Empting on a series of issues within the correctional facility and through the Sheriff's Department. On the 14th, we had county management. We had some additional discussions on budget for this year, remote work policy, and American Rescue funding. After that, we had a STRIVE meeting where we've further vetted the remote work policy. We'll be meeting this afternoon right after board with the PIC committee to go over a proposed draft that we hope to have before this board very soon. That afternoon, I met with Joe, Darren, and Mark, and we just went through clarifying some of the roles in the safety, security, and planning of emergencies here on campus, just to make sure that we have all of our roles correct and we're not missing anything. Talked with Dave Overall that afternoon on some of the issues that we covered here this morning. We also had the probation pre-meeting budget that was before you. And then lastly, participated in MCC JPA pre-meeting, which will be, the JPA meeting will be this Thursday. On Friday, met with Lori on a variety of different issues with the budget and on also bonding. That evening participated, in the Clay County Government Days. I want to thank representatives from Solid Waste. Planning and Zoning was there with MetroCog and talking about our comprehensive plan. We had representatives from Social Services, Sheriff, Highway, GIS on the government, for the Government Days. Yesterday we participated in the Sheriff's Budget Pre-Planning Meeting and also the American Rescue meeting that's been covered by Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Mojo. Yesterday afternoon, I met with Derek LaPointe from Downtown Moorhead Inc. and also Chairperson Lisa Borgen in regards to Clay County and economic development. Just want to note today in your boxes, you did have 2 invitations. Again, one is the groundbreaking for our transfer station resource recovery facility. That's going to be August 3rd at 1 p.m. And we'll have a small program as a part of that day. And you also received a invitation from Clay County Soil and Water Conservation District's fall tour, which is going to be September 9th from 2:45 to 5 p.m. And so we will get those on your notifications of potential quorum. With that, I concludes my report.
Thank you. Brian, anything? Okay. Colleen, anything? Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.